right, well, welcome to our third session of Mastering the TOEFL exam. I hope everyone is having a wonderful evening. I'm happy to be here with you for the next hour and a half. I am Ariella. I think those of you who are with me, the majority of you have been following the series, which is great. In case there's anyone new, I will reintroduce myself. My name is Ariella. I always look at the picture on the screen and then the face in the video with a sort of dark nighttime versus a beautiful daytime photo, but we are the same person. I'm the founder and CEO of the American Institute based in Algiers, and I am an English teacher by training. I've been in Algeria now for 5 years, but I'm American and I'm originally from Boston. Let's get started. So this course that you are joining in for right now is part of a free program sponsored by the U.S. Embassy in Algiers. Every month and a half, we're launching a new masterclass series. So this one is all about how to master the TOEFL exam. The classes are free. They are online. Right now, we're doing an intensive program. So I'm here every night for 6 nights in a row to go over every aspect of the TOEFL course. And we are together from 7 to 8:30 p.m. up until Saturday will be our last class. All of these are recorded classes, so you can rewatch this later on YouTube. You can see the link in the slide as to where they will be published. It is on our YouTube page, American Institute-DZ. The courses are open to everyone. Marhaba bikum. If you're interested in learning how to pass the TOEFL test and how to increase your score, you are in the right place. So this is the overview of the course. Well, I should say the first session was technically the overview of the course. That means overview of what is the TOEFL, why should I take it, what can I use it for, and a brief overview of the different sections. And then every night we're going through a deep dive of each section in the TOEFL. So last night was all about the reading section. How do I prepare for it? How do I strategically tackle it? What are the hard parts? What are the gotcha questions, etc. Tonight we'll be doing the same thing, all about listening. So it's quite different. In fact, the listening section I think is the most fun. Personally, I really enjoy the listening section, but I know that anything having to do with the technology and the audio can add a certain amount of stress. So I'm here, I'm ready to give you tips and tricks. I'm ready to hear your questions, the things that stress you out. And by the end of tonight's session, we will actually do a listening passage together, all of us, so you can actually trial what it is like on the test day. Tomorrow is the speaking section, and Friday is the writing section, and Saturday is our last class. We'll do a full recap of the TOEFL test and talk really about time management strategies and how you can best prepare. Everything related to listening. We're going to go over what the listening section looks like, and then the majority of our time will be spent, similar to last night, on what are the types of different questions you will get in a listening section so that you can familiarize yourself and prepare for them. We'll end with some time management and other tips for how to succeed in the listening section. And we also have tonight the opportunity to together try out a listening section exercise from the official website of the test maker, ETS. All right, I actually see a question coming in here from Abdul Jalil. This is recorded, so you can watch this later on YouTube. Have no fear. Okay, what should I expect in the TOEFL listening section? What does a listening section in an online standardized test actually even look like? So one of the most important things that you should consider when you're looking at IELTS versus TOEFL is the fact that the TOEFL exam listening section is not with a real person. I mean, IELTS is also not with a real person. Only the speaking section of IELTS is with a real person. But that's important because a lot of people, if they don't know what the TOEFL is, they think listening and speaking will be interactive. But in fact, these are recorded conversations that you are listening to through a headset. You're going to be given a headset at the test center, or you'll be using one from your house if you're taking the at-home version. You'll have your headset on and you'll have your microphone. In the microphone and in the listening part, you're not using the microphone, but you will be listening to recorded conversations. So everyone who's taking the TOEFL on that day is listening to these same passages. It's not a live conversation. You will have A total of 5 different listening, I want to say passages, but excerpts. We'll say excerpts. You'll have 5 different excerpts. So you'll have 3 lectures and 2 conversations. The difference is in a lecture, only one person is talking. So you're only listening to one person talk about something. When we say lecture, we're typically going to hear an excerpt from a university lecture. It's a teacher talking about a given topic to their class. It's usually an introduction to a topic because just like the reading section, they don't want to assume that you have any prior knowledge about what is happening. So they're usually introducing you to a topic with relatively understandable common vocabulary. You'll listen for between 3 and 5 minutes, and then you answer questions after the lecture. 3 to 5 minutes is a long time to listen to something. And you'll experience that when we get to the practice that we do together at the end. But when I first saw 3 to 5 minutes, I thought, great, no problem. Then I actually listened to an example practice test. 3 minutes of talking is a long time. It's a lot of data. It's a lot of information. And as you'll see when we're talking about tips and tricks, you are going to need to rely on taking notes. You are allowed to take notes during the TOEFL, and you are encouraged to take notes during the TOEFL because 3 minutes of someone talking at you, knowing that you will have to answer questions about these passages by the end, unless you have an amazing memory, which I certainly do not, you will need to be taking notes to get through the full passage without forgetting important information. Okay, so the first one, we have 3 lectures. Each lecture is 3 to 5 minutes, and you have 6 questions per lecture. So you listen to the lecture, and each one you have 6 questions. Then you listen to the lecture number 2, 6 questions. Lecture number 3, 6 questions. Then you'll be moving on to conversations. I personally prefer the conversations. I think it's easier to follow because if you've missed something that one person said, the response of the second person can help bring you back. Also, I think it's easier to pay attention to a conversation. You're less likely to space out or get distracted than a lecture. I don't know how many of you have been in a university lecture and you're sitting like this and you're getting sleepy and it's hot and you find your mind wandering, drifting, and you snap back and you've just missed a minute or 2 minutes. So that for me makes the lectures much harder than the conversations, even though, of course, on the TOEFL day, you will be extremely focused. You won't be sitting like this. It's a big investment of time and money, of energy. So I'm sure you'll be focused, right? Right, everyone? We will be focused on the day of the TOEFL. Yes. All right, the conversations, each of them are going to be 3 minutes long, and you have 5 questions per conversation. The total is actually 36 minutes exactly. If you were in the overview class with me, you will remember it's 36 minutes for everything. So just to reiterate, how long are the excerpts? They are 3 to 5 minutes each. I see, Ramesa, I see your question about replaying the audios, and that I didn't answer because we have an answer right here. How many times do you get to listen to them? Can you replay an audio? No, they do not let you replay audios. You don't get to pause. You don't get to rewind. You don't get to listen again. In fact, once you finish listening to the audio, the page changes and there's no button to even access that audio again. So in that regard, they're pretty harsh and they're pretty unforgiving. Ishak is asking, what about the speed? Will they speak faster? So they are speaking at, I would call, a normal speed, not fast, not slow, probably around the speed that I'm talking now, maybe slightly faster. But again, they're trying to measure your ability to comprehend spoken English that is spoken naturally. It's not a quiz. I think yesterday we were talking, someone in the chat mentioned Eminem, right? A really fast rapper. They're not trying to understand if you're able to decipher super speedy, fast English, but they do want to give you realistic conversations spoken at a realistic speed. And as we at the end of the class actually do a session together on the online practice test, you can hear the pace and you'll have to tell me if you think that's fast, normal, or somewhere in between. Another question I often get, can you go back to a certain point in the audio, or do you always have to start at the beginning? So there's two things to mention here. As I already said, you don't have any access. There's no buttons. There's no ability to play with the audio. You can't pause it. You can't go back and repeat a little bit. Okay. However, there are some questions where the test is designed to replay a specific portion of the audio. So this is to make it so that you don't have to memorize everything that is said. If the question is really focused on a specific phrase, they will actually replay that part of the question or that part of the audio for you before you answer the question. So rest assured that there is some replaying, but you don't get to decide what is replayed. It's automatically part of the question. All right, can you increase or decrease the volume? Can you pause? So as we've said, pausing is no. Increase or decrease the volume, you should be able to, yes. If you're on your home computer, then you're going to use your volume increase or decrease from your actual computer. In the testing centers, as we said in Algeria, you're always going to be doing the internet-based test, the IBT. So you should also be able to adjust the audio on the computer. The test platform itself doesn't have a volume feature. It's just about the computer itself. Ideally, the test center that you go to, and I recommend that you do this, when you arrive, you ask if it's possible to test the audio on your headphones. And there should be an ability to run a quick test at the beginning to make sure you can hear everything fine. But it's one of the requirements of these testing centers because they're regulated. And in Algeria, there's only one of them. And they had to ensure that they have certain qualities to their computers in order to get the permission to offer the test. So I want you to be relaxed that I've never heard of anyone having a problem with audio, with volume, not with audio, with volume. I've heard of people saying it was too fast and I wanted to replay it, of course. But the computer itself, the device itself did not cause any issues in the test. Okay. All right. So what are the overall goals of the listening section? Why are we doing a listening section? What do the test takers want to know? Well, they want to know that you can have a basic comprehension of spoken English, that when you hear a conversation, you can tell someone later what that conversation was about. In addition to a basic comprehension, okay, which notice I'm not saying specific vocabulary or repetition or memorization, focus really on the word comprehension. We're testing, I am not testing. The test is testing your ability to understand globally what is the general idea of a conversation or of a lecture. Then we want to I keep saying I am not the TOEFL test. The test wants to understand that you can assess the attitude of the person speaking. So if they're using language about being frustrated, I'm frustrated today isn't going well, I couldn't reach anyone, no one was picking up my calls, that you're able to speak to the attitude of the speaker. And you can also talk about their certainty, whether or not they seemed unsure of themselves, whether they were confident, whether they had doubt. So that's about analyzing a speaker based on what you've understood from the content and from the tone of voice. And then last is about connecting information. And that's definitely coming through in conversations, that you can see how what one person said is impacting the other person's response. It's also coming through in the lectures, cause and effect. What was the relationship between the beginning of the lecture and the middle of the lecture, for example. So you can actually follow listening beyond a global idea. You can see why they're saying what they're saying. All right, I see questions coming in about accent, and this is always what everyone is saying. Is wondering about, both with TOEFL and with IELTS. So both of the tests offer a variety of accents. I wish it was just American accent, or even I wish it was just British accent, so you didn't have to study multiple. Unfortunately, both of them, because there's only two in this case, rely on different accents. I will tell you what I suspect, and this is not statistically proven because only ETS, the test taker, could actually prove it. but I believe in the TOEFL, you will have more American accents than you do in the IELTS, because the IELTS test is going to try to give you accents from all of the sort of British former colonies or the British Empire. So they will give you a Scottish accent, for example, and an Irish accent. I would be surprised if you got a Scottish accent in the TOEFL, because that is such a small land area and a very rare accent. So this is what I suspect to be true and what others have told me is true for their test taking, but it's not a rule. So I do guess that in the IELTS exam, you're going to get Australian, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, different British accents, because the accent in London is different than the accent in Manchester and Birmingham, etc. I don't know if anyone's watched Peaky Blinders, because that's how I learned what a Birmingham accent sounds like. And then, of course, IELTS will include North American accent as well. They will have Canadian and American, but I believe that the majority of accents will be towards British former colonies or the British Empire. The TOEFL exam will also have British accents. I just think statistically, you're more likely to get American accents probably 50% of the time. All right, let's see. I see other questions coming in. Redwan is saying there's a lot of accents in America. That is absolutely true, Redwan. I don't think you will get a different American accent than what is considered neutral, or the accent that you would hear on the radio or on a TV show. I've never heard a Southern American accent in a test. That's not to say it doesn't happen, because the test makers can do what they want. And I don't want to promise you something and then you find it on the testing day. But I think if you're comfortable with a basic American accent like mine, I have a neutral American accent, I don't have a regional accent, that you should be fine for North American. The same for British. I would focus on a London accent and make sure you're really good on London. Then I would focus on an Australian accent. Once you've mastered these, go ahead into the different regions. But I think the majority, what I recommend is that you prioritize the kind of classic British, classic American, and classic Australian accents. Okay. Ariella's accent is understandable. Imagine if it's a Texan or Scottish accent. Yes, I do not have a regional dialect or regional accent, which is interesting because I'm from Boston, and Boston is famous for its accent. But what a lot of people don't realize is that the Boston accent, and actually a lot of regional accents in the United States, are on the decline. Less and less people are being brought up with regional accents. And I think it's probably about the spread of television and radio. And I wonder if it's the same in every country, but especially for me in my area of Boston, we never got the Boston accent. We just got the neutral accent. I see someone asking to talk. So this is webinar style. So you guys talk to me through the chat, through writing. It's possible we can try to do the microphone feature. Let's see if we have time at the end, but usually we have pretty bad connections and it's not always a good use of our time together. All right. Salah, I see you asking, what does the paper-based test look like? So everyone that I know of in Algeria has had to take the test in Algeria, either on their own device or in the one center in Algeria that's authorized to offer TOEFL, which again is Intuition. I'll put it back in the chat, in Sidi Yahya, which is a language center and a testing center. Intuition in Sidi Yahya. So they are the only ones offering, oops, I didn't send that to everyone. These are the only ones that offer the TOEFL test in all of Algeria, and they offer internet-based. So I've only prepared to tell you about internet-based. Even those of us who take the test outside of Algeria, it's more and more for internet-based testing because people want to be able to send their results and get their results quicker. You get quicker results when you're sending them on the computer, which I think makes sense. All right, let's go back to the presentation. All right, so what topics can I expect in the listening section? So if you remember last night when we talked about the reading section, I emphasized with you that they're going to be academic reading passages. The main reason for this is that the TOEFL exam was developed to help non-native English speakers justify their English level to attend university. So a lot of the content in the TOEFL test is going to have university settings, like a lecture hall with a professor or a conversation between students. They're using university textbooks and university scenarios for a lot. That's not to say it is everything, but it does hold true in the listening section as well. So you're going to hear things like campus conversations that could be between students. You'll see later we'll be listening to one between a student and a professor, but outside of class in a more relaxed atmosphere during something that we call in the US office hours, when the professor is in their office and makes themselves available for students to visit. University lectures we talked about. There is the possibility that you will hear a conversation related to something that we broadly say is a general interest topic. This is just a way to say that it's not necessarily academic. It could be a conversation in a cafe. It could be about current events. It could be about family life. They do try to bring at least one, maybe two listening passages that are not academically focused. But if you prepare for academic style listening, you should be good. That is going to be a majority of what you'll hear, and that is harder usually than general interest anyways. What does the listening section look like? Okay, here's where we look at it together. I'm going to change what I share. Okay, so this is not actually, I'm starting on the wrong page. This is not what it looks like at first. So you're going to hear it start talking, ignore it. We're going to do this later, but this is what it visually looks like.
Hi, Professor Mason. Do you have a minute?
Yes, of course, Eric. I think there was something I wanted to talk to you about, too.
Probably my late essay.
Ah, that must have been it. I thought maybe I'd lost it.
No, I'm sorry. Actually, it was my...
Listen to part of it. Okay. So that is what it looks like. The listening section is an image. So you have a visual sometimes. Sometimes you just have a title. But you have something that you're staring at. But then other than that, all you have is the progress bar at the bottom. And the progress bar does not include time. So you don't see, is it a 3-minute conversation? Is it a 4-minute conversation? You only can watch the progress bar at the bottom to determine how far you are in the listening passage. As you can see, or I hope you noticed, I had to exit out or it was just going to keep talking. There's no buttons. There was no pause button. The only button here is exit because it's a practice test, but in the real test, you also can't exit. You'll have your headphones on and you are stuck listening to it for the time being. Then we will go to the questions and they will look like this. So here's a question. Why does the man see his professor? And it's multiple choice. And you pick which answer by clicking the circle. There's no way to go back to the listening. There's no back button. There's no way to replay it. We just have the question alone. We also don't see all the questions at once. If you remember, I will go back to it. There are 6 questions for the lectures and 5 questions for the conversation. So you are going to face them one by one. That is what Salah already got the answer right. Salah, don't forget it because we're coming back. We're going to do this one together at the end. But I wanted, before we even go into how to master the listening section, I know for me, I'm a very visual learner. I wanted to show everyone here, this is what it will visually look like when you are doing the listening section. And if we go back to the beginning, I will just show you again how many questions you're going to have with each listening. So again, 3 lectures, 3 to 5 minutes each, and they'll be followed by 6 questions that you answer one at a time. Then you have 2 conversations, 3 minutes each, 5 questions. Again, 5 questions per conversation, again, that you answer one at a time. All right, let's see. Now we're going to be moving on to the types of questions. So these are about the questions that come after the listening, because just like we talked about with the reading, mastering the reading section, the best way that you're going to improve your score on the listening section of the TOEFL is to be familiar with the types of questions that you might get. This is a general overview of the types of questions. So we're looking at broadly 7 types of different questions. The first is called gist content and gist purpose. Before I explain it, I mean, maybe you can start reading and you'll guess it. I want to know, is anyone here familiar with the vocabulary word gist? Either I want you to type in the chat, give me a definition or put it in a sentence. I want to see how many of you have ever encountered the word gist, because if you haven't, it's a great vocab word to use in other settings other than the TOEFL as well. So I'm going to give you a second now to put something in the chat. Give me an example of a sentence using the word gist, or give me a synonym or definition. I'm not seeing anything come in except for Salah, who says no clue. So maybe this is a really good question then, because this word is not very common. I should say, this word is not commonly known by non-native speakers, but it's used all the time by native speakers. It's a really good vocab word. All right, so I'm going to tell you. Thank you, Noor. I get the gist of the TOEFL format. Mehdi, it was hard to get the gist of Ariella's talk. Okay, great. Thank you for the example. So we got a few. So gist is the main idea, the main point. That's it. That's all that it means. So let's say you go to hear a presentation and you have to leave early. And I call you, I say, did you enjoy? Were you able to understand? You can, like, even though you left early, and you say to me, yeah, I mean, I got the gist. It was really repetitive. So after 20 minutes, I got the gist. I could leave. The gist is the main idea. Okay? I see Mahdi, you sent a sentence, give me the gist. I've never heard it said in that exact context, give me the gist. It's usually used when referencing something we've heard. So it's not something we give, it's something we understand. I got the gist. And almost always we use it positively. I got the gist instead of I didn't get the gist. No, we use it positively. I got the gist. It's often you've left early. Maybe you couldn't hear very well. The speaker's microphone wasn't working, but it's okay. I got the gist. Or if you want to interrupt someone. So someone's really going on and they're talking and talking. You say, listen, I get the gist. Thank you so much, but I haven't. I got the gist. Let's move on to the next topic. Okay. All right. So a gist question in the listening section of TOEFL is about what's the main idea. So it's kind of funny that these, and I want you to know these titles of questions we did not make up. This is how the test categorizes their questions. And it's funny because it's using a rather challenging vocabulary word for probably the most basic questions. These are questions that are just about what's the main idea. Here's an example of a gist question. What are the speakers mainly discussing? And then as you saw in the example, it's a multiple choice answer. So back here, if I go back a slide, you'll see on the right, if it's a gist question, you're going to see things like mainly discussing. What is it mainly about? What is the main purpose? Why? A why question can be a gist question. It can say, why does the student in general ask this? Why is the conversation happening? What is the main purpose of this event? You're often going to get these questions early. It might be your first or your second question before they go into harder questions. Great. Next, we have connecting content questions. So these are asking you to show an understanding of different ideas, if you can connect them together. Sometimes they will actually have a visual to go with them. An example of a connecting question is this. Why is the woman surprised to learn she has been chosen as the new team captain? So we're connecting two things. We're connecting the woman's reaction with the cause, okay? A cause and effect. We have surprise and we have the fact that she was chosen as team captain. And we, again, I'm a we, I suppose I'll just assume I'm the test maker tonight. We, the TOEFL test makers, want to see that you, the listener, is able to connect the emotion with the cause. So that is connecting questions. Then we have detailed questions. So some people will say that detailed questions are the hardest. Why? Because you are not able to go back and re-listen to the audio. And so a detailed question is about something that you might not have noticed. And this is one of the main reasons why you should be taking notes. A detailed question is about specific facts. Here's an example. Who is buying new jackets for the team? It's one specific answer that if you missed the name or if you missed that part of the conversation, the rest of the context might not fill you in. You have to have been listening for the detail. Then we have an inference question, and you'll remember this if you were attending last night about reading passages, the reading section. So inference questions show an understanding of the meaning when it's not directly stated. So you are inferring. A synonym of inferring is you are suggesting or complying. Here is an example. What does the professor imply? So to know it's an inference question, you'll probably have a pretty obvious inference word, being infer, imply, suggest. All of these things say, hey, this wasn't explicitly stated in the listening section, but what is the conclusion, or what do we know based on what we heard? Good. Then we have function questions. So function questions ask you to identify the particular meaning of a statement in a context, because a statement can have different meanings based on the situation. So you have to understand, what does this phrase mean in this particular context? This is an example of a function question. What does the professor mean when he says X, Y, and Z? So let me finish this to make it more clear. Let's imagine we're having a lecture and the professor says, don't worry, I won't ask for the homework yet, because I know that I gave you a lot of work, so I'm going to give you more time. So in this example, what does the professor say when he says, don't worry, I won't ask for the homework yet? The appropriate answer would be, because he has given the student so much work. There's too much work. He's changed his mind. He's given an extension. But you could have another lecture where the professor says, don't worry, I won't ask for the homework yet, because I know there was a snowstorm and nobody had time to go to the library. So because of these external conditions, there's an extension. So in that scenario, if the question is, what does the professor mean when he says, don't worry, I won't ask for the homework yet? It's not about the students having too much work. It's actually about the snowstorm. So this is what we mean when we say a function question. What does this specific phrase mean in the context of the audio that you heard? And when you get a function question, you know that this relies on you having understood the entire audio and not the meaning of that sentence. It's not about what does it mean he won't give homework. It's about the why is he saying it and what is the function of that in this exact dynamic. Good. Organization. So this is where you will identify the particular meaning of a statement in given context. So we have why. A lot of these are why questions. Why does the professor mention his retirement? And this is really going to rely on your global understanding of the audio. Attitude. We talked about this at the beginning as well, in that this is one of the main reasons, or one of the main avenues of assessment for the TOEFL exam, is to understand that you can comprehend the attitude or the tone or the perspective of the speaker in the audio. So attitude questions ask you to show understanding of the speaker's attitude or their feelings about something. An example, what does the student think about X, Y, and Z? And usually it's not, it's definitely not something that he or she said. It is about the emotions that they expressed. It will use words that you didn't hear. So it is an implicit question, not something that was explicitly stated. So it's not necessarily, or it's rarely the student says, I am upset. And then the answer is, oh, the student is upset. Rather, the student expresses, I can't believe that they've canceled class. I drove an hour to come. This is crazy. I can't come tomorrow. And then you have to deduce based on the context, what is the emotion at hand? And that's when you would say the student is upset. All right, so those, let me go back to the overall because I went through these quickly. But compared to reading passages, I think the listening questions are a little bit easier to grasp in terms of the different ways that they're testing your listening. So we've got gist. I'm just going to call it for gist, reading or listening for gist, connecting content, questions about detail, inference questions, organization questions, function, and attitude. I'm seeing here, Nora, you have a question here. Are all of the listening questions multiple choice questions? Yes. This is something that you'll find with the TOEFL exam. Almost everything is multiple choice, of course, excluding the spoken component. But it's a big difference with the IELTS exam, which welcomes or requires open-ended answers where you're typing in answers to questions much more. In the TOEFL listening section, everything is multiple choice. I think multiple choice is nicer. I know some people who think it is much harsher and less forgiving. Let's see. Salah is asking, is the test prepared here in Algiers by the center or by the Americans? So the test is prepared by an American company. The company is called ETS, which someone asked me yesterday, what does that mean? The acronym, I'm guessing it means Educational Testing Service. But it is a testing company. They prepare the tests in their central location in the US, and they authorize different centers around the world to offer the test. So there's one testing center in Algeria that has or actually someone even yesterday told me there might be a second now in Sétif. Regardless, a center that is authorized to offer the test has absolutely nothing to do with the test creation. They don't create it. They don't see it ahead of time. They can't, print it out and share it with their friends. They are extremely limited. The only thing that they have access to is the operating system. The students sign up, they pay for the test, they come at the scheduled time, and then they are on the device of the center, but accessing the test as it was created in the United States. Okay, it's very important to know if you take the test in Algeria, in France, in Canada, you're taking the same test everywhere in the world. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Let me see. Yes, Noor, thank you. Apparently MBI has the TOEFL. This is the center in Sétif. That's good to know. Otherwise, people really have to travel far for their test. Great. And I see someone, Kamal, saying that you've really improved your English using Discord. And I think that is great. I always recommend, especially for people who don't live in English-speaking areas or they're not immersed in an English-speaking environment, to find virtual communities where you can practice speaking authentically, spontaneously. You're engaged in a real conversation where you have to listen, interpret, and respond just like you would if you were in an English-speaking environment. So great. I'm happy to hear that you're getting that on Discord. Amazing. Ramesa is asking, is the test for free? Oh, I wish it were. I'm very sorry to tell you that standardized English tests are not for free and they're not cheap. So in our first session, we talked about the pricing for the test. I can tell you that if you take the at-home version on your computer, you will pay $240. That's US dollars. And you need to have access to electronic payment. That's the only way you can do it on your own computer in your home. If you don't have access to dollars or you don't have the operating system, and you can see all of these requirements on the website, then you have to take the test at a testing center. The center in Algiers is charging 63,000 dinar to take the test. I'd be curious, Noor or anyone else in the chat, if you know the price in Sétif. I think it's the same because these prices are generally set universally. But it would be nice to know if maybe it's cheaper in one center or another center. I will add to Ramesa's question, the test is not free and the results of the test are not active forever, because language is a skill that we can gain and we can lose. So the test score, the test results are only valid for a period of 2 years. After 2 years, you will be required to retake the test in order to prove that you have maintained the level that you had prior. So that is one of the reasons that I say be strategic. This is not a test that you take just because you're curious about your level. This is something that you take when you need the results, because you want to get a visa to go to a country that is requiring it, because you want to get accepted into a university that requires it, or you want a job from a company that requires it. The test is an investment, and that is why you are here learning from me how to make the best of your investment and get such a good score that you don't need to take it more than once. All right. I'm seeing Nora say perhaps it's 60,000 in Sétif rather than 63. Good to know. It's always going to be around that range of, I would say 55 to 65,000 dinar right now. And who knows, maybe these prices will start going down in the future, inshallah. Okay, so let's talk tips. We've gone over the different types of questions. We're making really good time, so we should be able to do a listening section together. But one of the most important things that you need to think about when you're training yourself for the listening section is basically take notes. It's really hard, even for me as a native speaker. It's hard for me to concentrate to a listening to an audio, especially when there's no visual stimulation. It's recorded language. I'm on a computer. It's designed for you to space out, to stop listening, maybe to yawn, maybe to get hungry. It's one of these it's something that I want to say, it doesn't set you up for success. It's hard to stay focused and concentrated. And yet the results of this test rely on your ability to stay concentrated. So one of the best ways to keep yourself focused is to take notes. Have your scrap paper. As we mentioned, when you're in the TOEFL exam, you're permitted to bring in white paper and something to write with, a pencil or a pen. Depending on the center, they may offer this to you, or they may allow you to bring it with you. When in doubt, I like to always show up with at least 2 pencils, 2 pens, one black, one blue, and regular white paper, in case they say, no, there's no pens, but yes, pencils, or vice versa. Here is a recommendation. Oh, I think maybe we removed it. We used it during the reading section. A recommendation for how to organize your notes, which is essentially to create a chart where you can write the main ideas of each listening passage on the left, and then maybe some details like the name of someone who's mentioned on the right, just so you can track and start to follow the conversation. As you do practice listening sections in your practice tests online, which I know you will do because I'm encouraging you to do tons of online practice, you'll start to pick up on the types of details that are important to remember. It's always going to be names, maybe cities, anything that's a proper noun, they may come back and ask about. So proper nouns are things that we capitalize, like first names, like cities, like names of books, like names of coffee shops, names of restaurants. Anything like this is something you want to write down, because it's possible they'll come back and ask you in a detailed question. Another few tips for taking notes, because it is a skill to be able to take notes and continue to listen. So first is you're going to want to focus on keywords. So when I'm talking about proper nouns, this is something that you can consider a key word. Signal words, it's a similar concept as keywords, something that is signaling an important shift in the conversation. Maybe a word that expresses emotion, maybe something about cause and effect. These are the kinds of things that you want to put in your notes. Use abbreviations and symbols. no one's looking at your notes. You don't turn these in afterwards. They don't have to be something that anybody else can understand except you. So go ahead and write however you need to, writing just the beginning of words, the first letter, the last letter, anything that's going to help you figure out, help you remember what you listen to when you answer the question. Review and organize. Essentially, don't just take chaotic notes while you're listening. Plan ahead. Make your paper something clean so that when you're in the question answering phase, you don't have to decipher what you put down there in a rush. I want you to remember that you only have 36 minutes to listen to 5 audios and answer 28 questions. I'm doing the math. 6 questions per 3 lectures, that's 18, and then 2 sets of questions of 5 for the conversations, that's 10. So you have 5 audios and 28 questions in only 36 minutes. So you're going to get probably about 30 seconds a question. What is the hardest part about the listening section? So we have 3 main challenges that we hear about from the TOEFL listening. Everyone here seems very aware of the first one, which is understanding various accents. We put here the flags for Great Britain, US, and Australia. But as we talked about, this can be something really hard if you have not been accustomed to different accents. You haven't had exposure. There's an easy way to solve that, which is to intentionally expose yourself to different English accents. Next, we have background noise. They will intentionally play audio tapes that sometimes have background noise. So if the conversation is happening in the hallway of a school, you may hear in the background the sounds of people walking, moving, maybe opening and closing doors, maybe opening and closing lockers. Maybe it's in a cafe and they will have a bit of background noise in a cafe. It won't be anything really, really loud. It won't be anything that's going to make you suffer, but it could be loud enough that it just pushes you harder to hear. So how can you work on this? Practice listening to audios that have background noise. These could be things from YouTubers who are talking when they're out in the world. This could be TV shows where they incorporate multiple people talking at once or talking over each other, like you have in Friends. Okay, but anything that is a little bit more realistic will force you to be able to listen and understand an audio despite a little bit of background noise. Now, it should also be mentioned that it's possible that you will be hearing noise from the test center. So if you're taking the test in a center, you will not be in your own room. It will be little, I want to say cabins, little stands with people in them. They usually have not a full wall, but like a half wall. So if you lean out, you can see the other people. That means you can also hear the other people. Normally, you're not doing your listening while someone is speaking, unless they're going through the test super fast. This is by design. The listening section is second, and the speaking section is fourth. This means that normally when you're doing the listening, so is everyone else. And if you're really early to listening, you left the reading section early, which I don't recommend. Take all the time they give you, but just imagine it should be quiet because everyone around you should be reading. Okay, now imagine you've entered the listening section at the normal time, and then someone next to you skips ahead. They decide to leave the listening section early. Well, they'll be on the writing section. So again, there shouldn't be background noise. Maybe you're hearing this from the writing section. If you can hear, I'm tapping on my computer. Okay, but we are humans. Someone could be coughing, someone could be sneezing. I don't think anyone will start crying, but it's possible. Someone drops their pen, someone crumples their paper, okay? Make sure that you are not so stressed out or unprepared that these little noises affect you. That would really be a shame. So do not prepare for your listening section in total and complete silence, because that may throw you off on the day of. The last thing that is a challenge for folks, and we talked about this right at the beginning, is about the speed of the conversations that you're listening to, or the pace. They are long audios, as we talked about in the beginning. 3 to 5 minutes is a long time to listen, and to listen with detailed attention. And they are, I would call them normal paced, but I understand that that is pacing, whether it's considered fast or normal, is based on your level. So if you are an intermediate speaker, that's someone who's at a B1 level, it will feel fast. If you're at a C1 or an advanced level, it should feel appropriate and relatively normal. They are not speed talking at you, but they're also not talking slowly. Okay, so that can definitely be stressful. Okay, common traps or distractors I should watch out for in the TOEFL listening questions. You can see we even have a stick figure man caught in a trap. So the first is false information. False information is essentially when there are sort of two things that are mentioned, but one is really the main idea and one is a secondary point. It's a little bit, I mean, I don't know if I agree with the word false here, because it's not that the information is false, but it was placed there to mislead you, to confuse you. It's not an extra little detail. It's actually a portion, a sizable portion. It takes up maybe 30 seconds. It's something that's explained and explored, but it's actually not at all the topic of the listening. And we'll listen for this when we do ours together so we can see what was the false information here. What this is doing is it's trying to trick you, and it will say, can you understand the main context in spite of a few other side stories? Okay, so you should expect that. You should expect some side stories that are not relevant to the main context, and you need to be able to tell to answer the questions and telling them what was the main context, not picking everything that was mentioned. Another sort of trap, I would call false information a distractor or distraction. Paraphrasing is, I guess, a little bit more of a trap. So essentially, the questions won't use the same vocabulary that were in the listening passage. So let's say someone is saying that that they were delayed arriving to class. Maybe the question would say, why were they late? So they're not going to use the word delay. They're going to use the word late. They're using synonyms. They're paraphrasing a long passage into something short. They're doing this intentionally to test if you can understand the context enough that when it's given to you in a different phrase, you are able to demonstrate comprehension. The last one is irrelevant details. And this is similar to the first one, but just smaller. Little tiny points that are there to distract you, but are completely irrelevant to the story. Okay, great. All right. Speaker attitude. The tone does not always reflect the facts. Be careful on this one. So let's say we are dealing with a student and a teacher, which is actually the audio that we're going to listen to together has a student and a teacher. Let's say the student arrives and is out of breath. They're panting, and so they seem really tired. And so you might say to yourself, okay, they're upset, they're unhappy, they seem disorganized, they seem stressed, but maybe the conversation is actually a really good one. Maybe they were running. Yes, they were late, but they were running to share some good news. So make sure that the attitude or the initial attitude of the speaker is not the only thing you rely on when trying to understand the actual reality of the situation. Sometimes they'll trick you like that. They'll have someone who sounds kind of bored, kind of sleepy, maybe upset, but that's just their tone of voice. And in reality, when you listen and you understand, you can see, oh, this is just a calm person, but this is a positive scenario, and vice versa. Someone who sounds super optimistic and upbeat, but they might be saying like, yep, yeah, I failed my class. Yep, I'm going to have to retake it next semester. Yeah, no, I'm upset. I'm super upset. right? Because attitude and tone are different and unique for each of us. And some people, one person sounding disappointed is not the same as the other person sounding disappointed. And how do we assess tone? It's through listening to what is said in addition to how it is said. So don't let the tone be the only thing you rely on to answer the question. Multiple speakers. So this is actually something I prefer. I think having multiple speakers makes listening much easier, but it can also be hard in part because there's no video to go with it. So you're not necessarily looking at one person whose mouth is moving and then it goes to a video of the next, their mouth is moving. You're going to have to track the audio just through sound alone with no visual. So it can be confusing. Okay, who's talking now? Did they change? Okay, I missed it. So all of that can happen in the conversations. And then, like everything in the TOEFL, especially since they made the test much shorter, if you've been here in the last 2 nights, I've been talking about this big overhaul that the TOEFL team did. They reduced the test length by about 1 hour, about 30%. It used to be a 3-hour long test, and now it is 1 hour and 54 minutes. So one of the effects of that is that the sections are fast. So you will be doing your listening section for 36 minutes only, and you will have 28 questions, not to mention the time that you have to commit to the listening passages as well. So it would be, let's say, on average, we're going to have 4 minutes. So that's 20 minutes will be dedicated just to listening to the passages. That leaves you only 16 minutes to answer 28 questions. So someone can do the math, but I like to say you have approximately 30 seconds per question. You don't have time to sit and think. You are moving through the questions. Great. All right, I'm going to check to see if we have any other questions, and then we're going to go ahead and do some listening exercises through ETS. All right, let's see what we have. Salah, I see we missed you. We dropped you for a little bit for note taking. I'm happy to have you watch the recording, but essentially with the notes, it's about being fast and being organized. But the main takeaway is please take notes. It's really hard to retain all the information, especially imagine by the time you're on the 4th or the 5th audio, you need to take notes to make sure that you're able to recall the main details quickly. All right. Fazia is saying it would be better if you take the test from home. I completely agree. I know that it can be a little bit stressful in terms of making sure your computer has the right operating system, because they do have strict requirements for your at-home computer, but they're not extreme requirements. It is something that even if your computer doesn't have it, someone in your network or your parents, it's likely that someone has a computer up to date enough. They're not requiring like super top high end, etc. They just want to make sure you have a legitimate version of Windows installed. That's it. And then you can do it in the peace and calm and tranquility of your home. Of course, pending that you're able to pay for this online. So Noor is asking, when I was talking about the listening section, the reading and the speaking, Noor, you've picked up on something which is absolutely true, which is that okay, it's great and quiet when everyone is listening at the same time because everyone's sitting quietly listening to their headset. But during the speaking section, everyone is speaking at the same time, which is absolutely the case. And this is the reason I've heard many people list this as the main reason that they either take the IELTS test or they take the TOEFL test, but at home, because it's distracting. I mean, you're not necessarily able to hear clearly what other people are saying because you also have headphones on your ears, you're listening to audio, but there's a lot of background noise when you suddenly have a room full of, let's say, 5 to 6 people, maybe up to 10 to 12 people talking into their headsets at once. So yes, the speaking section is a bit loud and a bit distracting. Okay. So Anis, you're telling me you got an 8.5 out of 10. That sounds great. Nice work. That looks like you'll get a great score. All right. Salah is asking, are there online practice tests for TOEFL? Yes, there are. You can absolutely take an online practice test and get a simulated score. this is what I recommend should be the first thing that you do when you're thinking of taking the TOEFL. And actually, I'm sort of cutting what we're going to say in the last class about how to effectively prepare, but why not? I'll repeat myself when I get to that class. But essentially, what you want to do is the first thing I recommend is to take a full practice test within the actual time. So the 35 minutes for the reading, the 36 minutes for the listening, etc. And you get your practice score, knowing that you can't necessarily get your speaking score, right? Because that's not part of the algorithm. But you can at least try out every section, do a self-assessment, reflect, where did I feel confident and comfortable? Where did I struggle? And then on the multiple choice sections, you can get your scores right away. Then let this guide your practice, guide your study plan. Do your studying based on those practice tests, take another practice test, ensure you're where you want to be, then you sign up for the test. Okay, so let's try together. You're going to have to tell me if the volume is loud enough. That is the one part I'm a little bit concerned about. And as you remember from when I shared the screen a second ago, as soon as I start sharing, as soon as I start playing the audio, I can't pause, I can't wait, I can't go back either. Okay, so if you're telling me the audio isn't loud, I'll have to cancel out and try it again. But let's go ahead and see how it goes. So we're going to listen to a conversation. This one is between two people, and we're going to answer questions together. I want you to see this. I left this up on purpose. I want you to see exactly what I did to find this, because it is that easy to find practice listening sessions. ETS, this is Google search, ETS, which is the name of the website of the test company that makes the TOEFL test, listening practice test. And I'm going to the very first one, TOEFL practice questions. It's going to direct me right into a practice test. I highly recommend using these, the official website for its practice materials, as you'll get the most up-to-date examples. So this is the first thing that we will see. Make sure your headset is on, and they have a nice demonstration of a test taker wearing the headset. So the headset needs audio and it needs microphone.
Listening section directions. The listening section of the TOEFL IBT test.
They're actually going to talk to us.
Ability to understand conversation.
Okay, I'm going to mute it for now, and I'll just show you these descriptions, but it's actually reading everything out loud to me. Essentially, it's giving me instructions. It's telling me what's different between the practice and the real test. It's telling me that in the real test, there will be a clock that shows how much time remains. Okay, the clock is only there when you're answering questions. It's not there when you're listening to audio. It's also talking to me about this icon. This is an icon of a headset. When they show the icon, that means the question will be audio question. So I won't be able to read the question. I will have to listen to it. Okay, I think that's everything relevant for this. Now we're going to go to the first question. But tell me first, I'm going to turn the sound on. Tell me if you can hear it.
You may use your notes to help you answer the questions. Your notes will not be scored. In some questions, you will see this icon. This means that you will hear,
Good.
Not see,
all right.
The question.
Here is the listening example.
Some of the questions have special directions. These.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a professor.
Hi, Professor Mason. Do you have a minute?
Yes, of course, Eric. I think there was something I wanted to talk to you about, too.
Probably my late essay.
Ah, that must have been it. I thought maybe I'd lost it.
No, I'm sorry. Actually, it was my computer that lost it, the first draft of it. And, well, anyway, I finally put it in your mailbox yesterday.
Oh, and I haven't checked the mailbox yet today. Well, I'm glad it's there. I'll read it this weekend.
Well, sorry again. Say, I can send it to you by email, too, if you like.
Great. I'll be interested to see how it all came out.
Right. Now, I just overheard some graduate students talking. Something about a party for Dean Adams?
A retirement party, yes. All students are invited. Wasn't there a notice on the anthropology department's bulletin board?
I don't know, but I wanted to offer to help out with it. whatever you need. Dean Adams, well, I took a few anthropology classes with her and they were great, inspiring. And well, I just wanted to pitch in.
Oh, that's very thoughtful of you, Eric, but it'll be pretty low key. Nothing flashy. That's not her style.
So there's nothing?
No, we'll have coffee and cookies, maybe a cake, but actually, a couple of the administrative assistants are working on that. You could ask them, but I think they've got it covered.
Okay.
Actually, oh, no, never mind.
What is it?
Well, it's nothing to do with the party, and I'm sure there are more exciting ways you could spend your time, but we do need some help with something. We're compiling a database of articles the anthropology faculty has published. There's not much glory in it, but we're looking for someone with some knowledge of anthropology who can enter the articles. I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would.
No, that sounds kind of cool. I'd like to see what they're writing about.
Wonderful. And there are also some unpublished studies. Did you know Dean Adams did a lot of field research in Indonesia? Most of it hasn't been published yet.
No, like what?
Well, she's really versatile. She just spent several months studying social interactions in Indonesia, and she's been influential in ethnology. Oh, and she's also done work in South America that's closer to biology, especially with speciation.
Not to seem uninformed.
Well, how species form. You know, how two distinct species form from one, like when populations of the same species are isolated from each other and then develop in two different directions and end up as two distinct species.
Interesting.
Yes. And while she was there in South America, she collected a lot of linguistic information and songs. Really fascinating.
Well, I hate to see her leave.
Don't worry, she'll still be around. She's got lots of projects that she's still in the middle of.
Whew. It's long.
Why does the man go to see the professor?
So then they're also going to read the question to us. At this point, now it's a practice test. We're not timed. So let's take a second to just breathe. Yes, Salah, that was 3 minutes long and it felt longer. I have a hard time paying attention. I could see some of you starting to make jokes about baklava. I was laughing at the jokes. I started drifting off. I was thinking about tomorrow's presentation. It's hard. And I know the stress of the day will make us more focused, but tell me, were you able to listen to the whole thing? Did you feel like it was fast or it was slow? We'll answer the questions in a second, but tell me in the chat first, how did it feel? Nadir, it was too long. Ida, it was kind of fast by the end. It was okay for me. It was good, easy, and joyful. I miss the terminologies about species. Right. At the end, they suddenly start kind of defining technical language. That's not very nice of them when we're tired and spacing out. I was able to understand almost anything okay. It was good. It was okay, but long. So notes are necessary. Exactly. Now you can really understand why we should have notes. Hisham says, I actually don't remember anything. Honestly, this is what we need notes for, because I think our human brains are not designed to maintain information that comes with this level of visual, like a frozen picture, nothing else to capture us, just audio and listening. Ani says it wasn't that long at all compared to what I listened to yesterday. So maybe you've already done a lot of practice. Oh, that's right. You took your test yesterday. Again, in a test setting, you're going to have more ability to focus. Some people are saying it seems like they spoke really quickly. All right. Awesome. So let's answer the questions, everyone. Why does the man go to see the professor? Is he going to hand in a late assignment? Is he going to find about jobs? Is he asking about Dean Adams's current research? Or is he going to volunteer to help organize an event? I have late assignment, first answer. What else do I have? Number one, first one. Nobody disagrees? He's going to hand in a late assignment? He's going, oh, we have one person thinking he wants to ask about jobs. The reason he's going is to hand in a late assignment. This is a gist question. What is the main reason he's there? to hand in a late assignment.
How did the man learn about Dean Adams's retirement?
It always surprises me when they start reading it aloud. How did the man learn about Dean Adams' retirement? How did he hear about Dean Adams' retirement? I'm going to take, oh, I wish I could make a poll. I could take votes on this, but I don't want to tell you. We're going to see the answers at the end. I'm going to take what I see most people saying. So we have 4 options. He read about it in an email. It was posted on a bulletin board. He heard other students discussing it, or Dean Adams announced it in her class. I have someone saying first. I have someone saying second. And I have a lot of people saying third. First is reading about it in an email. Second is bulletin board. Third is discussing. So third is winning. I'm not going to say anything. We'll talk about it at the end. I'm going to put in third. He heard other students discussing it. Remember, we're going to have 5 questions because this was a conversation.
Why does the professor refuse the man's offer to help with the party?
So now we answer 2 of the 4. So why does the professor refuse the man's offer? We have 2 people are already working on it. She prefers that he spends his time on another project. The party does not require preparation, or Dean Adams is not permanently leaving the department. All right, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which are the 2 I should check? Now it's hard. Actually, I'm even asking myself, I might have to listen to this again. Why does the professor refuse? I see second and third coming up. So she prefers he spends his time on another project, and the party does not require much preparation. From what I remember, I know that Dean Adams is permanently leaving. So I know it's not number 4. I think you all know it's number 4 because nobody's putting number 4. So we're stuck between 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to put 2 and 3 because I think I see the most people saying 2 and 3. I see some 4 and I see some 1. We're going to go with 2 and 3, and we might re-listen afterwards to see what we missed the first time. Let's go to question 4.
Why does the professor talk about speciation?
Here's our technical language. Speciation, which, as Noor pointed out, came at the very end when we were tired of listening. Oh, yes, on the last question, which I won't be able to go back to, on the last question, it said select 2 answers. That's the hard part about this. I think if I try to go back, it will replay the audio. So we'll just have to review the questions at the end. But in that question, it said underneath, choose 2. All right, but the rest of them, and I don't know if you noticed this, but the one that said choose 2 answers, it had squares. And the ones that are 1 answer, they have circles. And if I move to a next circle, the black moves. So it's very obviously only 1. So why does the professor talk about speciation? What am I getting? I see first, second, and third. What's my most common? Third. We have to describe the main focus of the work she needs help with, to tell the man about a new research area in ethnology, to explain what Dean Adams chose to work on in Indonesia, and to demonstrate how varied Dean Adams' research has been. I have third as the most common, so I'm going to go for it, but I'm getting less and less answers. So I think a lot of us are feeling like maybe we need to listen again, or we needed to have listened better the first time, or perhaps we needed to have listened with notes. We're going to go with 3. I see 4 as well, but my most popular is 3, so we're going to do 3.
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
There's not much glory in it, but we're looking for someone with some knowledge of anthropology who can enter the articles. I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would.
Why does the professor say this?
I hesitate to mention it, but I don't suppose this is something you would.
So this is an example of a question that is repeating a segment from the audio. And then it also has the symbol showing that they're not going to let you read what was said. You have to rely on listening. So the answer, is it the professor says this to express doubt about the man's qualifications? Does she say it to ask the man if he would be willing to work on the project? Does she say it to ask the man to recommend someone for the project? Or does she say it to apologize for not being able to offer the project to the man? I see first, I see second, I see first, I see second, second, second. Okay, number 2 is winning out. So I'm going to go for number 2, and then we're going to look at the answers together. That should be our last answer. So let's see how we did. It looks like we got 3 out of 4 incorrect. Why does the man go to see the professor? I thought we got this correct. Actually, I knew one of these was incorrect. All right, we're listening a second time. I'm actually shocked at the first one. Now I have to listen better. The first one is incorrect. So this one, remind me, why does the man see the professor? We said he went to see the professor because of a job. No, sorry. He went to see the professor because of the homework assignment. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I had an outage, a fire, the electricity went out. Look, I'll turn on my video. You can see I'm sitting in the dark. Happy to be back. But now I'm on my hotspot, so we're going to keep going and hope that the electricity comes back on. Here I am, class in the dark. I don't know. Are other people having an electricity outage in Algiers? It's very spooky. Now you have my face like on the Blair Witch Project. Okay, so we're going to go back and listen again. But I need you to help remind me, because my memory of the audio is just as bad as my memory of what our answers were. I like someone saying, I'm so shocked at our answers that my electricity went out. So number 1, we said the man went to see the professor because he was talking about a late homework assignment. How did the man learn about Dean Adams' retirement? We said he learned about this because he heard students talking. This one was correct. Why does the professor refuse the man's offer to help with the party? I think this was the one where we were choosing between numbers 1 and number 2 about there was too many people helping, or there wasn't much preparation. We got that wrong. Why does the professor talk about speciation? We said because it was about Dean Adams' research in Indonesia. We got it wrong. Why does the professor say this? The phrase was, I don't know if you'd be interested, etc. And we got it right. This one was about offering him a job. So don't hesitate after you finish the class tonight to go to the same link, and it will give you 5 full practice exercises, just like they'll have in the real exam. So for those who are considering TOEFL versus IELTS, something that you should know is the TOEFL listening section has a lot less questions. So you only have 11. Oh, wait, it's not 11 questions. It's 28 questions. This is not correct. You have 28 questions. And the TOEFL, you have 40 questions. Okay, so disregard on the slide where it says 11. You have a total of 28 questions in TOEFL, and you have 40 questions in IELTS, but you have roughly the same amount of time. So what you're looking at in TOEFL, you have less questions, but you have more sections. So you have 1 extra listening. You have 5 listening audios. In IELTS, you have only 4 audios, and each one has 10 questions. So I don't think there's any reason to pick one over the other, but that's the main difference. You have more listening time in TOEFL with less questions. You have less listening time in IELTS with more questions. And then the last thing here is just going to talk about how do you improve your listening skills overall? How can you work on your listening skills in English? So start with podcasts. Podcasts are great because you can slow them down or you can speed them up. You can listen on 0.8 speed or 1.2 speed to work on understanding at different paces. As we said before, make sure to practice listening in busy spaces. That's something that is really an indicator of when your language learning, your language ability is going to the next level, is when you can have conversations within contexts that are noisy and you can still understand. Listening to different accents, we also talked about that, the British accent, Australian accent, and American accent, and then talk to English speakers like myself. Although I know you can't talk back to me here, but come by American Institute. We have a lot of English speakers and we'd be happy to talk to you. We have plenty of free events that you can participate in. That is it, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me. Feel free to take a screenshot of this slide. These are our additional resources for listening. All right, everyone. I hope you had a great evening with me. I'm sorry we lost some time for the electricity cut. And I see some comments. Anis is telling me that I can use one of these cool tech tools. Yes, I think he was using not Kahoot, but one of these tools where people can submit answers. Yes, these are really cool and it would help us. We could have voted on the answers for the listening exercise. Great idea, Anis. Thank you for coming, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Tomorrow night, we're doing the speaking section of the TOEFL test. All right, have a good evening, everyone, and I hope to see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Have a good night.